Welcome to my video series on research reports. In this video, I will be talking to us on components of a journal paper. What are the various components? What are the details of each of those components we mentioned in the last video? So we start with the title. The title of the paper, your journal paper or any paper you are thinking of writing, any research report you are thinking of writing, should be concise and informative. Make the title concise and make it informative so that from the title, anybody reading the title can understand exactly what you are talking about, what the work contains. And then it should succinctly explain the message or the takeaway point the author hoped to convey. By reading your title, even without reading the full paper, I should be able to have an idea of what this thing is all about. That's very important. And like I said, it should be in the last video, it should be about approximately 150 characters or maximum of 18 words. Now, it's always advisable that your title should start with keywords and not with general words such as a or an or effect of. Those are general words. If you start with effect of, for some of the search engines that we use, of course, in those days, let me say some years back, when you say effect of, if you just bring out so many papers, so many publications, both in Greek, in physics, in medicine, because effect of can mean anything to any field, can be used in any field rather. So instead of that, it's better you start with a keyword. Your title, you already have some keywords from your title, from your research. So use one of them to start your title. And then don't say a or an investigation of. No. Avoid such. So start with keywords. The next is authorship. Now, the authorship of the paper, because after writing the title of the paper, the next thing is the name of the author or authors. Authorship should be based on whether an individual made substantial contributions to the conception or design of the work, or the acquisition, analysis, or interpretation of data for the work. So it is only people who have made substantial contribution to the work that can be listed as authors, or whether the person actually drafted the work or revised it critically for intellectual content. Because there are situations where a new entrant may just write something in terms of a publication and give the draft to a senior colleague, and the senior colleague may look at the paper and decide to just rewrite it for him or her to show him how things should be written. So you don't just put people's name as authors without them making substantial contribution to the work. Authorship should also be based on whether an individual gave final approval of the version to be published. Now, this is usually the situation where, in laboratories, where the professor who owns the lab has to authorize whatever goes out of that lab in terms of publication. He gets the grant, he recruits graduate students and postdoctoral fellows to work on the project, and then at the end of the day, they produce the paper. So he has the grant, he has the lab, so of course, he will be listed as one of the authors. So that's okay, and he gives final approval for the version of the paper to be published. And then it should also be based on whether an individual agreed to be accountable for all aspects of the work, ensuring that any questions relating to the integrity of any part of the work are appropriately investigated and resolved. This is very, very important. You see, some people just put people's name as co-authors just for patronage. That is Very, very wrong. It's unacademic to do that. You don't put people's name on papers for patronage. No, the person must have made significant contribution to the work, and not and apart from that, it could be embarrassing sometimes, especially, younger colleagues do this a lot. Maybe a graduate student, you write a paper, you don't show it to your boss or to your mentor or your supervisor, and you just send it in for publication, and you have included your mentor's name there or your supervisor's name there. That is a very, very wrong practice, because the supervisor may feel embarrassed, especially when people see that paper and they begin to ask him questions about it. I mean, it will be like, this quality of paper, how can my name be there? So please, it is very, very important. Whoever will be listed as an author of a paper should have been part of the research work, part of the paper. So it is not for patronage. So I said, avoid using gratuitous and honorary authorship. Don't just put somebody's name there just to say, out of respect, I want to honor you. No, 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 you don't do that. You don't. For scientific papers, the authors must be people who have contributed to the work substantially. Now, how about the abstract? Your abstract should state briefly the purpose of the research, that's what was done, the principal results, okay, there is an omission there, how it was done, and then the principal results and major conclusion, that's implications of the results. That's what that major conclusions talk about. So what is missing here is, after purpose of the research, the method, how it was done. So what was done, how it was done, major findings, and implications of the results. Those are 4 items your abstract must contain. And the abstract should be able to stand alone without any reference. Of course, you don't put in references inside the abstract. It must stand alone. And then abstract should not, it should not contain abbreviations unless they have been defined at their first mention in the abstract itself. So abbreviations should not be used unless they have been defined within the abstract itself. And of course, the maximum length, like I said earlier, should be between 150 and 250 words, depending again on the guideline for authors in the journal you want to publish in. Just follow the guidelines, very important. How about the keywords? These are words of great significance which act as key to access your article. They are used for indexing purposes. That's the essence of keywords. And then there are words that searchers will likely enter into search engines to locate your article. So if you are working on any topic, there are keywords there if you want to search for a relevant article on that. There are those keywords you type. Once you type, you say articles relating to that topic will come out. So those are keywords. And that's the essence of having keywords also. They are normally listed immediately after the abstract, and there should be a maximum of 5 keywords in a manuscript. Again, this will depend on the instruction from the journal you want to publish in. Some may allow up to 6 keywords. So if 6 are allowed, fine, go for it. But generally, around 5 will just be okay. Now, how about the introduction? After the abstract and keyword, the next part of the journal paper is introduction. This is the first section of the main text in any research report. And it should consist of, 3 major paragraphs, I would say. The first being, the first paragraph should provide a context for the research. So you should have the background to the research. Why is the research important? That's justification. Those are things that should come up in that first paragraph. Now, in the second paragraph, you should describe the gaps existing in the knowledge base that this research is designed to address. And this is where some aspect of literature review will come in, because you want to say, okay, so and so has been done by this, by that, by that, by that, and so on and so forth in different places. Now, from that small review you have done within that paragraph, you now should be able to bring out the gap in knowledge. What is the existing gap that your work is intended to fill? And that will lead you directly to paragraph 3, where you will state your objectives, the objectives of your research or the hypothesis being tested, and why it is of interest. So these are things you need to put in. Be mindful of this when you are writing your introduction. This is essentially what the introduction should contain. Then the next is methods. This section contains a summary of how the research was conducted. So this is where you have the how. In some cases, you have this as materials and methods. In some cases, you have it written as methodology. In some instances, you have it written as methods. Whatever it is, just follow the guidelines from the guide to authors of the particular journal you are publishing in. And so the highlights of this should include your study design. Of course, for some, the study area will, depending on the kind of research, some will start with study area. Then your study design, the materials used, the laboratory or field techniques that were used, and the statistical methods used for data analysis. So these are things you have to state. Like I have said again, you must go through publications that are already existing in the journal you want to publish in, read their methods, see how they have arranged their methods, see how they have stated their statistical analysis, a procedure, and so on and so forth, and just follow the guide. Follow the guide. Now, the methods should be clear and concise and at a level of detail to allow readers to understand what was done, how it was done, and under what conditions. So, if there are limitations, you have to state them. While it is important to be concise, some journals require very detailed methods to ensure reproducibility. In other words, to ensure that somebody else can repeat the method you have used to do a similar work elsewhere as a way of corroborating what you are doing, what you have done. Then the next thing are the results. So here you provide information about the study subject demographics or study data summary in this section. Yeah, this is where you provide your data summary, the field data or laboratory data you have collected. This is where you put the summary. Also under results, it's helpful to use graphics to illustrate the data variables utilized in the analysis. So because graphical methods can provide an adequate description of the data along with the formal statistical analysis. Do not explain or duplicate in the text what can be easily included in tables or figures. So again, and of course, you don't also duplicate what is in a table in a figure. So you don't repeat what you already have in a table and then make a graph of it. No, you have to decide on which one you want to use. And that will depend on which one will convey meaning more. Is it table? You have a particular type of result you're asking. Should I represent this as a table or as a figure? So the decision will depend on which of them will convey your results more to the audience. Is it tables? Is it figures? Then you go for whichever one is more appropriate. And then here under results section, you are not talking of interpretation of results, no comparison, just stating the facts, the results as they are. Now, according to Altman et al. 1983, the purpose of statistical methods is to provide a straightforward factual account of the scientific evidence derived from a piece of research. That's the purpose of the statistical methods. So your analysis should have been able to produce a straightforward factual account of the scientific evidence of your work. And this is what results are all about. How about discussion? The first paragraph should summarize the key findings, but take care not to repeat what was already included in the previous sections of the paper. And then you must relate these key findings to a priori hypothesis that was stated in the introduction section. So if you have stated an hypothesis, earlier on, this is where you now relate your findings to the hypothesis, whether that hypothesis is valid or not. And then, of course, the next paragraph, you explain your interpretation of results and how it relates to what is already known. More importantly, not known in the literature. So you will need to now begin to relate your work to what exists. So, and I say here, refer to other reviews and published papers, but sparingly citing your own work in this field when relevant to avoid excessive self-referencing. So here now you are trying to compare your work with other people's work. Of course, you might have done one similar work maybe in the past that you want to relate to it. Fine, do it, but do it scarcely. That's self-referencing. Make it very scarce so that it will not be appeared as if you are just referencing yourself, critiquing yourself, and so on. So it's better you bring in other people's work, what others have done, and so on. If yours will be here to make it very sparing, just very, very few. And then clarify what your study adds to the knowledge base in that area of specialization. So what you said you have done this research, you have analyzed this data, you have this result. So what? What is your work contributing to knowledge? So you have to state that as part of your discussion. By the third paragraph of your discussion, you should discuss the possible mechanisms that explain the results. So you say, oh, you found so and so and so. It differs from so person's result. Fine. Why is your own result like it is? What are the possible reasons? Possible reasons, maybe because you have a different study area or one thing happens, or you have to state that. And then in the fourth paragraph, you describe the strengths and limitation of the study, which can include issues relating to the study question, the methods, analysis, and interpretation of results. So if there are strengths and limitations of the study, now bring them up here as part of your discussion in paragraph 4. And paragraph 5 there, will be looking at, you have to describe the potential controversies, if any, raised by the study. And you have to describe the implications of the study results and future research directions for you or other scientists as a result of your study, because by the end of your study, you may realize that, oh, there's still the need for further research in one area or the other. This is where you will state it. That's in paragraph 5, the 5th paragraph. And then explain what the findings mean to science in the bigger long-term picture. So all these are things that must go into your discussion. The next, and in some places, for some journals, what you want to call conclusion, which is the aspect that has to do with area of further research and so on, is usually lumped up with discussion, such that you don't have discussion as a separate section. For some journals, you have to just be familiar with the particular one you are publishing in. So let's look at acknowledgements. This section should include a statement acknowledging those who are substantially involved and helpful during the study. If your study was funded by an outside agency or any agency whatsoever, then use this section to include the grant names and numbers and then acknowledge the donors. This will ensure that your published work is correctly linked to funding, which is particularly important, especially for publicly funded grants. Now, your tables and figures. Tables and figures are an important way to illustrate a large amount of information concisely in one place. So the graphical display of data is both art form and scientific in intent and purpose. So you have to decide what analysis and data will be needed to answer the questions you pose in the paper. Provide a short name for each figure and legend, and ensure that each table and figure has a legend that clearly explains the information being illustrated. You know, there are sometimes, because of the size of the table, you use some abbreviations to represent some variables, you know, as column headings in the table. Now you need to define what those abbreviations mean just below the table, so that your table is complete as it should be. As most journals are published in black and white color, make your tables and figures plain. It's always good to do that. Don't make them color, unless if you are writing technical reports that you are submitting to a client. Of course, all your tables and graphs should be in colors. But if you are writing just for journal papers, most journals print in black and white, and it will be fine if you also make your tables and figures plain. And then you can use different patterns or lines to illustrate information. So instead of different colors for your bar graphs, for example, or histogram, use different patterns, you know, or lines to differentiate them. Then table headings should be above the table. Note that, please, very, very important. Every table must have a heading which should be above it. Every figure or graph should also have a heading which should be below. So figure headings are usually below the figures. Whether it's a map or a diagram, whatever it is, put the figure headings below. Now, below your tables, you should indicate the source of information, because there are sometimes your tables, what is contained in your table, actually information from another source, another report. So you need to state the source of your table, or the information in your table. Just say under the table, just say source, and then state where it came from. That's if you are not the original author of that. Then we have references. So each journal has a style for including references in the paper, and for listing the bibliography or references at the end of the paper. So find out what the style is for the journal you want to publish in, and please follow that style. Most journals include this information online in the instructions for author page. So check it out and follow. Ensure that the references are formatted correctly and are complete. So go through your paper again, see every single reference you have mentioned in the work. You must ensure that they are all listed. And don't list references in your reference section that you have not used inside the work. No, we don't need that. Any reference listed must have been used somewhere inside the work. That's very important. So reference databases such as Reference Manager, e.g. Mendeley, and the EndNotes are extremely helpful in terms of organizing and formatting references. And that's very, very true. So consider learning how to use them. If you are a researcher, either a graduate student or even a research scientist, it's good you know how to use some of these tools, because they will make life easy for you. That's reference managers. If you go to even MS Word, if you are using MS Word to type your work, there are ways you can also use the reference manager in MS Word, and that will really help you a lot in terms of handling your references. So in the next video, we will discuss what you should consider when selecting a publishing outlet for your manuscript, because there are so many journals out there, so many conferences out there. So how do you determine which one you should patronize, which one you should send your paper to? That will be the subject of discussion in the next video. Join me then.